I'm going to very briefly explain apartheid in South Africa. Quickly, apartheid is a former policy of segregation and political, social, and economic discrimination against the non-white majority in the Republic of South Africa. It's important to understand the apartheid structure started well before 1948. Three major groups are important. There's the indigenous black South Africans who've been living there for over 100,000 years. There are the Danish settlers that came in 1652, originally called the Boers and later called the Afrikaners. And lastly, there was the British settlers who originally came at the end of the 19th century. When the Afrikaners first immigrated, they quickly took control of large swaths of land and forced indigenous people to work on them as slaves. The British came in to take control of what the Afrikaners had taken over, and they successfully did that during the 1806 Napoleonic Wars. The indigenous people were continuously exploited, and this was more drastic when gold and diamonds was found in 1886. In 1912, the ANC was created to help protect black South African workers and to protect black people's voting rights. Despite that, land acts were implemented in 1913 and 1936. This led to about 80% of South African land being owned by white people, and white people constitute about 20% of the population in South Africa. Even with the ANC, white-only parties with heavy British influence were in control of South Africa from 1910 to 1948. Apartheid officially began in 1948 when Daniel F. Malan was voted into office. Malan was part of the Nationalist Party and ran on a policy of apartheid which was heavily supported by Afrikaners. This election was fairly performative because black people weren't even allowed to vote. Malan quickly started implementing his apartheid policies. He enacted the Population Act of 1950. This classified people into four racial categories: Bontu or black Africans, white, colored or mixed people, and Asian for Indian or Palestinian people. This was also followed up with the Group Areas Act of 1950. This designated residential and business areas for each race and restricted other races from operating in those areas. This forced many non-whites out of areas they were previously operating in. In 1953, he implemented the Bontu Education Act. This was a state-run school that was required for black kids. They were trained for menial labor the government thought was fit for their race. He also implemented the Suppression of Communism Act. This defined communism as any opposition to the government. These policies were met with heavy resistance. Nelson Mandela appeared as a prominent figure fighting apartheid in the 1950s. Mandela was eventually imprisoned in 1963 for 27 years for opposing apartheid. He fought as much as he could while still in prison. He advocated a lot for prisoners' rights while he was there. One of the more significant protests was the Sharpville Massacre of March 1960. The end result was police firing on a large crowd, killing and injuring about 250 black people. There was also the 1976 Soweto Uprising. This was initially a student-led protest resisting the change to an Afrikaner language for all black students. 2 children died during this initially peaceful protest, leading to a lot of international outrage, and this led to an aggressive, violent protest. In terms of international responses to the apartheid, the UN enacted an arms embargo in 1963 that was made mandatory in 1977. The US also imposed economic sanctions in 1982. Nelson Mandela was released from prison in February 1990, and later on that year there was official conversations about ending apartheid in South Africa. In 1994, Mandela was democratically elected president. My point for this video is that there's no fucking way South Africa is racist towards white people.